Very good morning, I greet to everyone. Today, we will discuss the lack of effective implementation of inclusive education in Malaysia and some suggestions on how we can overcome the issue. To further explore this topic, we have another two speakers with us today, Ms. Irina, Ms. Patricia, and me myself, Ms. Lika. I will now begin the discussion. My first point is overcrowded classrooms and the heavy workload borne by teachers are significant factors that hinder the effective implementation of inclusive education in Malaysia. Inclusive education is designed to provide equal learning opportunities for all students, including those with special needs. However, when classrooms exceed the recommended capacity, teachers struggle to meet the diverse needs of each student. Research on Malaysian primary schools done by Maharam and Noor Azman in 2024 shows that many classrooms do not adhere to the national standard of 2.25 meters square per student, with some classes accommodating far more than the recommended maximum of 26 students. In such crowded settings, it becomes challenging for teachers to offer the individualized attention necessary for inclusive practices. For instance, in many urban schools, a two-shift system is implemented to manage high enrollment numbers. So this two-shift system means that there will be two sessions of school time in a day. One group of students will have their classes in the morning, while another group will have theirs in the afternoon. Although this system undoubtedly eases physical space constraints or albeit temporarily, it ultimately increases the workload for teachers by compressing instructional time and reducing opportunities for collaborative planning. Heavy workload further complicates the implementation of inclusive education. Teachers in this environment are responsible for preparing extensive lesson plans, managing diverse classroom activities, and performing additional administrative tasks. This increased burden not only leads to teacher burnout, but also limits the time available for adapting lessons to suit the unique needs of students with learning difficulties or disabilities. As a result, teachers may feel overwhelmed and less capable of executing the additional strategies required for successful inclusion.
Sorry, Ms. Nika, but if teachers suffer from burnout, what will happen to the students in the classroom during the teaching and learning process?
That's a good question. So, in my opinion, if teachers suffer from burnout, the negative impact on students can be significant. Burnout often leads to reduced teacher engagement, less effective lesson delivery, and a diminished capacity to attend to individual student needs. For example, in a classroom where a teacher is overwhelmed, they may struggle to provide clear instructions or timely feedback, which can leave students confused and unsupported. For instance, a teacher managing a large class in an urban school was unable to differentiate their instruction for students with learning difficulties, which would cause these students to fall behind their peers. Consequently, burnout not only affects academic performance, but it can also destroy the supportive and dynamic classroom environment, which is essential for effective learning. Adding more to my point of teacher burnout, in Malaysian educational settings, this issue has reached alarming levels. Thomas et al. In 2024 described burnout as a syndrome stemming from persistent workplace stress, which are marked by exhaustion, detachment, and feelings of ineffectiveness. These researchers highlight that excessive administrative tasks, large class sizes, and the overwhelming workload not only compromise teachers' ability to deliver quality education, but also severely impact their mental health. For instance, the study found that the pressure of managing heavy teaching loads, coupled with prolonged periods of administrative work, has led to symptoms such as anxiety, depression, and even physical ailments like migraines and gastrointestinal disturbances. So these issues in turn have contributed to increased rates of early retirement and teacher attrition, undermining the stability and quality of the education system. Real life examples further illustrate these challenges. In some schools, teachers report that managing classes with 30 to 40 students makes it nearly impossible to provide individualized support. The lack of adequate time and resources means that students who require special attention may not receive it, thereby widening the gap in educational outcomes. Moreover, teachers have expressed that the constant pressure of large class sizes and administrative duties leaves little room for, uh, for the professional development and collaborative efforts necessary to implement inclusive teaching methods effectively. Adding more to my opinion, addressing these issues requires concerted efforts from educational policymakers and school administrations. By enforcing classroom capacity guidelines and reducing non-teaching responsibilities, teachers could be provided with the time and resources needed to plan, implement, and refine inclusive education strategies. Such improvements would not only enhance the educational experience of students with special needs, but this also would help elevate teacher stress and promote a more inclusive and supportive learning environment.
Thank you for sharing your opinions, Vika. While I understand the argument, I believe that while classroom overcrowding presents challenges in Malaysia, it is an issue that is actively being addressed through government policies, alternative teaching strategies, and technological advancement. Instead of viewing it as an insurmountable obstacle, it is more constructive to analyze how education stakeholders are implementing solutions to improve inclusivity and teaching quality. And this is supported by the Ministry of Education's Zero Reject policy, which ensures that children with disabilities are accepted into mainstream schools. And this initiative is supported by Special Education Integration Programs, SEIP, that provide teachers with extra resources and training to manage students with special needs effectively. Evidenced by the Malaysian Education Blueprint from 2015 to 2025 has outlined strategies to improve school infrastructure, including constructing new schools in high demand urban areas and reducing the overcrowding issue. In Selangor, for instance, the government has approved the expansion of school buildings in densely populated districts like Petaling Jaya and Klang to accommodate increasing student numbers. Moreover, many schools have special education teachers, guru pendidikan khas, and assistant teachers, also known as pembantu guru pendidikan, who provide the direct support to students with disabilities. For example, schools in Putrajaya, they have successfully incorporated co-teaching models where a general education teacher and a special education teacher work together to ensure that their students with diverse learning needs receive appropriate support. Additionally, online teacher communities such as Malaysia Teaching Learning Network (MTLN) provide a platform for educators to share best practices and innovative strategies to further reducing the burden of individual teachers. So this is supported by the increasing use of digital automation tools that help streamline administrative work. For example, schools are implementing from VLE, virtual learning environment, to manage lesson planning, grading, and attendance tracking digitally. In schools piloting automated assessment tools, teachers have reported a 13% reduction in grading time, which allowed them to focus more on lesson implementation. Well, it seems to me that school administrators have taken steps to delegate non-teaching tasks to clerical staff, freeing up teachers to concentrate on instructional responsibilities. The government has also introduced standardized compliance reporting system, which reduce the redundant paperwork and minimize the bureaucratic inefficiencies. So, the contrary to the claim that rural schools lack adequate support, as you mentioned, multi-grade teaching is a globally recognized approach used successfully in countries like Finland and Canada. But in our country, in India, teachers in rural schools receive specialized training to implement community instruction, cooperative learning, and differentiation, ensuring that all of our students get the benefit from quality education despite mixed age classroom.
Okay, Ms. Patricia, can you provide me an example for that?
Okay, for instance, in Sekolah Kebangsaan Udurubai Sarawak, the teachers they use project-based learning and cross-grade collaboration, which enable the students of different levels to engage in meaningful learning experiences. So it means that the smaller student population in rural areas often allows teachers to provide more individualized attention, which compensates for the challenges of managing multiple grades in one class. Furthermore, mobile education initiatives like Kelas Rumah, which was launched in Sabah, they allow the students in remote areas to access online learning resources to further supporting their education.
That's an interesting point, Ms. Patricia. I do agree with you, but in my opinion, teachers are the backbone of the classroom, yet many of them lack of necessary training and confidence to handle students with diverse needs. This is supported by Mazarul et al., which highlights that many teachers only have a moderate level of understanding regarding inclusive teaching strategies. What does this mean in practice? It means that while teachers may be aware of the concept of inclusive education, they struggle to implement it effectively because they have not been properly trained to support students with disabilities. For instance, differentiating instruction is a crucial component of inclusive education. However, many teachers they do not know how to modify lesson plans to cater to students with different learning abilities. If a student has a reading difficulty, does the teacher know how to provide alternative learning materials? If a student with autism struggles with sensory overload, does the teacher know how to adjust the classroom environment? In many cases, the answer is no. Teachers are simply not given the proper tools or knowledge to accommodate these students effectively.
I see your point, Miss Ariza, but could you clarify clarify how we can expect these teachers to implement inclusive education when they are not given the necessary training and preparation. If a mainstream teacher is suddenly asked to accommodate a student with visual impairment but has never been trained in assistive reading tools, how can they be expected to ensure that student receives an equal learning experience?
Thank you, Ms. Ika. That's what I'm trying to highlight here. Because without proper training, teachers may feel unprepared and overwhelmed, leading them to believe that students with disabilities would be better off in specialized school. This lack of confidence not only limits the effectiveness of inclusive education, but also reinforces the idea that segregation is the better option, rather than striving to create an inclusive learning environment for all. Moreover, there is still a perception among some educators that students with disabilities would be better off in specialized schools rather than integrated into mainstream school classrooms. This mindset limits the potential of inclusive education and reinforces segregation instead of inclusivity. If teachers themselves are not fully convinced of the benefits of inclusion, how can we expect the system to work effectively? Even if the teacher were fully trained, their efforts would still be limited without adequate resources. This is the second major issue. School lacks the tools, facilities, and support staff necessary for inclusive education. According to research, many schools, especially in rural areas, do not have basic assistive resources such as braille textbooks, speech-to-text software, or even communication boards for students with disabilities. Without these essential tools, how can we claim that all students are given equal opportunities to learn? Moving on to my next point, beyond physical resources, the shortage of special education professionals also poses a major challenge. Many schools lack of special education teachers, speech therapists, and occupational therapists. As a result, mainstream teachers are often left to manage the special education needs students on their own without any professional guidance or support. This creates an overwhelming burden on teachers and also it deprives students of the specialized help they need to succeed. Let's also not forget the issue of school infrastructure. Nur Hasriza and Muhammad Orazmi in their study also found many schools do not have ramps, accessible toilets, or even a modified classroom for students with physical disabilities. Imagine a student in a wheelchair struggling to even enter the classroom because there is no proper access. If schools are not physically equipped to support these students, then how can we say we are implementing inclusive education effectively?
Well, Ms. Arisa, allow me to answer a question. Some believe that inclusive education in Malaysia is thriving simply because policies exist and students with disabilities are placed in mainstream classrooms. But is that really inclusion or just integration in name only?
Thank you, Ms. Patricia. I disagree with the claim that inclusive education in Malaysia is progressing well. While there are policies in place, the reality is that many schools they do not have the resources to support the inclusive learning. It is not enough to simply place students with disabilities in mainstream classrooms if the schools do not have the tools and staff needed to accommodate their needs. True inclusion means providing equal access and opportunities, and currently we are falling short of that goal. How about it? We agree that for inclusive education to be effective, we need to prioritize teacher training and increase resource allocation. The Ministry of Higher Education should where prospective teachers from the mainstream get exposure to the needs and information of special education. If we address these two critical areas first, we can then work towards improving the policies and ensuring better implementation.
Okay, so Miss Arliza, I do agree that prioritizing teacher training and increasing resource allocation are important. However, I think that these measures must be a part of a broader systemic reform that empowers teachers by actively involving them in decision making and policy formulation. Without creating a supportive school culture where educators can share their best practices, participate in ongoing mentorship programs, and adapt training to the specific needs of their classrooms, even the best resources and training initiatives may fall short of achieving true inclusivity. What do you think, Ms. Patricia?
From my perspective, the successfulness of implementation of inclusive education, it actually depends heavily on the active participation of parents and the community. However, when inclusive education is not effectively implemented, significant barriers in the parental and community engagement. Specifically, these challenges include limited awareness, ineffective communication, lack of parental training, socio-economic barriers, social stigma, weak school community partnerships, and inadequate advocacy. Therefore, addressing these issues requires a structured and collaborative approach that foster engagement through awareness, communication, and policy support. So, to begin with, many parents and community members lack a deep understanding of inclusive education and its long-term needs. Because research has shown that in order to create inclusive school, we should actively improve learning environments to preserve the pupils' diversity and to promote the social participation of all. It seems to me that they may not be aware of their children's right, available support services, or how they can actively contribute to their child's education. Moreover, misconception about disabilities and learning differences further discourage engagement. Past research showed that parents of students with SEN expressed ambivalent attitudes regarding inclusive education.
Sorry, Ms. Patricia, can you give me an example of how you overcome this issue?
So, to overcome this issue, my example is schools and policymakers must use structured communication strategies to ensure that the parents and community are well informed about inclusive education policies and practices. I would argue that another significant challenge is the lack of effective communication between school and parents. This is illustrated by McCall et al., where their population is therefore seen as an important factor in education, having a high impact on learning outcomes, motivation, and children. Indeed, an essential element of inclusive education is strong and consistent communication. Nevertheless, many educational institutions they fail to establish effective communication channels, which leading to disinformation. So, in my opinion, parents of children that have special needs, they often feel like excluded from decision-making processes that makes it difficult for them to advocate for their children. So, the schools should implement regular process reports, parent-teacher meetings, or also known as PIBG, and digital platforms to ensure continuous and meaningful engagement. It seems to me that parental involvement is most effective when parents are equipped with the necessary skills to support their children. For Unfortunately, in a system where inclusive education is fully implemented, parents receive minimal guidance or training. For this reason, workshops, counseling sessions, and mentorship programs should be established to help the parents develop strategies to support their children's learning and social development. And also, providing access to educational resources and professional support also can help strengthen parental confidence and participation.
I can see where you are coming from, Miss Patricia. For my thinking, how about we agree that families from lower income backgrounds they face more obstacles and need more support compared to higher income families?
Thank you, Jessica. So to answer that question, it is equally important actually. Families from lower income backgrounds face additional obstacles in engaging with inclusive education, as we discussed. For example, financial constraints, lack of transportation, and limited access to specialized learning materials create challenges in supporting children with diverse learning needs. So, in order to address this, schools and governments should provide financial assistance, transportation services, and access to assistive technologies. By doing so, they can ensure that all parents, regardless of socioeconomic status, can actively participate in their child's education.
Thank you, Ms. Patricia. While I acknowledge that parental and community engagement is valuable, I believe the bigger issue is the lack of early intervention programs for children with special needs. Inclusive education does not begin with when a child enters a mainstream classroom. It starts with early identification, support, and intervention to ensure that children with disabilities develop the necessary skills to succeed in an inclusive learning environment. Without proper early intervention, many students with disabilities enter school without the foundational support they need, making inclusive education even more difficult to implement effectively. This was according to Hui and Muhammad in 2018. So, research by Scout et al. In 2012 has shown that early intervention services such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, and also individualized learning plans. This can significantly improve a child's ability to adapt to mainstream education. However, in Malaysia, these services are often limited, expensive, or inaccessible, particularly in rural areas. Courtesy, many parents never even realize their child has a learning disability until they struggle in the mainstream classroom, at which point teachers are expected to accommodate their needs without the proper foundation being set beforehand. Furthermore, the lack of structured early intervention programs puts additional pressure on schools and teachers. When students with disabilities enter mainstream classrooms without prior support, teachers who are already dealing with resource limitations, they must try to address learning difficulties on their own. This reactive approach makes inclusion far more challenging than it needs to be. If proper intervention and support were provided before children entered the school, inclusive education will be more effective, less disruptive, and also more beneficial for all learners. So, rather than focusing solely on parental and community engagement, we must address the gaps in early intervention services. If children with disabilities receive the right support from the beginning, schools would not struggle as much with inclusion, and parents they would be able to participate in a system that is already equipped to support their child's needs.
So I see that in Malaysia, but we all agree on one thing, that the inclusive education in Malaysia uh, needs to be pressed on. It's an important issue that we all need to work on. So for Miss Latricia, do you have anything else to say?
Thank you, Ms. Vika. So, to conclude, from my perspective, the successful implementation of inclusive education requires a strong collaboration between parents, communities, and schools. However, various barriers such as limited awareness, ineffective communication, and inadequate parental training, socio-economic challenges, and social stigma in the meaningful engagement. Addressing these issues demands a structured approach that fosters awareness, enhances communication, and provides necessary support. By implementing these effective communication strategies, offering parental training programs, and ensuring that financial and logistical assistance, school and policymakers can create a more inclusive educational environment. Ultimately, overcoming these challenges will enable parents and communities to play an active role in fostering a supportive and equitable learning experience for all children.
I am sure we can all agree with that, Ms. Patricia. Very good points. What about you, Ms. Ariniza? Do you have anything else to say?
For me, to conclude all the things I've mentioned, inclusive education in Malaysia faces critical challenges from inadequate teacher training and shortage to the lack of structured early intervention programs. While policies exist, their implementation remains weak due to limited support for both educators and students. Without proper early identification and intervention, I think many children with disabilities and they enter schools unprepared, placing an overwhelming burden on teachers who lack specialized training. Schools also struggle with insufficient assistive tools, special education staff, and also accessible infrastructure, further hindering meaningful inclusion. To bridge these gaps, prioritizing early intervention, strengthening teachers' training, and increasing resource allocation are essential. Inclusion must go beyond policy rhetoric. True equity in education requires a proactive investment, ensuring that all students, regardless of ability, receive the support they need to thrive.
Okay. Let me make the final conclusion then. In conclusion, SEN inclusive education is fundamental not only for meeting the academic needs of students with special needs, but also for fostering a more compassionate and equitable society. When educational systems embrace inclusivity, they create environments where every learner is valued and provided with the necessary support to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. This approach empowers students by recognizing their unique abilities and challenges, and by promoting adaptive teaching practices that cater to diverse learning styles. Ultimately, investing in SEN inclusive education is an investment in the future, one that builds resilient, well-rounded individuals who can contribute equally and positively to society, and that helps break down long-standing barriers of inequality.